In this video, I'll go over how I prepared my Gallowdark for Into the Dark Kill Team. The first thing I like to do with a big project is nip everything off of the sprue and group it into piles based on its place in the assembly guide. This saves quite a bit of time as opposed to assembling and or cleaning things individually. Real quick, I'm going to go over the tools that I used in preparing Into the Dark and the Gallowdark. The first thing that I'm going to use, in some situations you might need a sanding block. This is a cheapy one that I picked up from the dollar store, but it does the trick really well. 2 different grits of sandpaper, P240 and 600, a piece of cardboard, some different size files, random torn pieces of sandpaper, and an X-Acto knife. I would suggest wearing a dust mask while sanding and preparing your Gallowdark. It's quite a messy process. So with the sanding block, what I'm doing is I am basically using this straight edge on the side to help me line up on these tabs. And I'm just putting the tab on the sanding block and just gently sanding it down and trying my best not to get any of the details here, but just sanding that flat surface of the tab so that it slides in to the pillars quite easily. So that's basically what I'm doing with the sanding block. Okay, so with the cardboard and the sandpapers, what I'm doing is I'm just simply laying sandpaper on top of the cardboard just to give it a little bit of a give when I push into it. This is kind of rough, and over time it's gotten glue and stuff on it, so some of the surfaces are uneven. This cardboard kind of helps alleviate that problem a little bit. And basically, in essence, what we're doing is we're creating a very large emery board. And that's kind of something that is also really handy when modeling, is using those emery boards to get through all these burrs that we find, on our models. So basically what I'm doing is I'm just using the flat surface and grinding away at it, and you can see it gets it really quickly. And I can just go around these flat surfaces and grind it down quite quickly. And I'm going to do that on all sides of it, just these flat surfaces of the tabs and the main burrs that came off the screw. Once I've done that, I'm just going to basically just swap sandpaper and put the 600 grit on there and smooth it out so that when I put primer on it, it doesn't really show all those scuff marks. And that's basically it. Just keep in mind that you might have to go over it a couple of times to get it completely smooth, but that'll give you the idea of what I'm doing with this stuff. Okay, so with the files, especially with this large flat one, there are these spaces in here, and inside these spaces there's a little bit of a mold line, and because these are fitting in to the pillars, we kind of want to smooth that area out too. So I'm basically using this flat file to go in here and get the sides that are both inside, the places that I wouldn't necessarily be able to hit very effectively with sandpaper, and just filing those down really quick. And that's just going to help the overall assembly when it gets put together before playing games and whatnot. And that's basically it. Also, these files can come in handy when you have these burrs on the inside of the doors and whatnot, so you can go through and basically file down those burrs. And after you do that, there will be some scuff marks, so that's where these little pieces of torn sandpaper come in. Is you need to go back in there and kind of smooth that area out. Otherwise, those scuff marks will show once you put primer on it, once you start painting it. I mean, for some of you that might be cool stuff, as far as weathering and whatnot, but for some people they might not want that. So just go back with some sandpaper and spend a little bit of time to smooth it out, and you'll be good to go. So another thing you can do with the burrs in here, if you don't want to go the route of using the file, is you could take your X-Acto knife, and if you take your X-Acto knife, then just be as careful as you can with it, but you can essentially carve away that burr and then again go over it with the sandpaper, or you could do the scrape method too. It's basically up to you. But just be careful anytime you use a blade, because there's a chance that you could cut yourself. So just be as safe as possible and do whatever you feel the most comfortable with. That's always, you know, a really important rule. Every now and then stop to just check to make sure that the pieces that you're working on fit in. And you can see that this piece fits in quite nicely. And on top of that, you want to check to make sure that your cap goes on. And so this cap goes on quite nicely. So what's going to happen is you're going to put these things in here, and you're going to have, some of these are going to jut out a little bit. So I would go back with the file and just kind of give it a good pass. You know, this flat file is really nice because it's flat and it's got angular edges, so it fits in this little groove quite nicely. So you can just go ahead and do that and smooth it out, and you can see that this cap will fit on quite easily afterwards. So tip or trick. In some cases, you're going to be working on, you know, some of these pipes and wires and stuff, and you might not be able to get the X-Acto knife in there on a tiny mold line, or your files won't fit. So in some cases, what you can do, and as long as, you know, the mold line itself is not too prominent, you can use this plastic glue, and you can kind of go over where a mold line would be with the plastic glue and rub it down, and oftentimes it'll melt it enough to where it's not entirely visible when you prime it. Another thing that the plastic glue will do, and this is really hard to see because I can't zoom in, but if you have an area that's kind of scuffed up, it tends to kind of smooth it out a little bit. So just a really quick tip. It doesn't work on everything, but on some things you can definitely use it, and it can help speed up the processes for taking care of mold lines on areas like these pipes that are grooved and whatnot. Anyway, I hope that helps. Hope you try that out if you haven't already been using that. So, okay, so here are the materials I'm going to use for painting prep: masking tape, an X-Acto knife, and some leftover pick and pluck sponges. Okay, so with this masking tape, I'm just gonna put it over the tabs. And if it's 18 millimeters, it'll fold over perfectly to the next side. Okay, so with the sponges and the cutters, or the X-Acto knife, what we're going to do is we're going to make these little tiny sponges to basically set in and mask out these slots. So in order to do that, what I did is I have a bunch of this leftover pick and pluck foam, and I believe this is 35 millimeter. It could be any size, and if you can't find this, you could just use tissue paper or something, or find something at the dollar store that's similar and do the same thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use these lines that are on the sponge as a guide, and basically I'm going to cut the sponge in half as best I can. Okay, so once it's in half, this size right here fits quite nicely into these spots, so you can just cut across. Now for this one up here, I found that if you take this sponge and you cut it in half again, you make a quarter cut, that this is basically the same size as this, and then once again make one more half cut, this should fit in here quite nicely. So you can tease it a little bit and get it to where it's close to the edges here, but you see that it'll mask out that slot pretty well. So it might take a little bit of time and a little bit of effort, but this will work quite nicely. So after prepping everything with all the sanding and the filing, there's going to be quite a bit of dust on your models. So before you prime them, you want to get that dust off. So you have a couple different options to do that. One is washing everything in water, in soapy water, and then letting it dry, but that'll take another several hours. Most of the GW models don't really need that. The other things that you can do is you can get some canned air and simply kind of use it on the models to get the dust off. You can go around with a big old brush and kind of sweep it off, or if you have an airbrush lying around, this will be kind of your next best option when it comes to using canned air or compressed air. And if you have a compressor outside in your garage, you could do that too. But basically you just want to get the dust off of the model before you put paint on it. Okay, so with getting this stuff ready to take it outside and prime it, I need to put it onto something. So what I'm doing with some of these larger walls is I've cut out some cardboard and I'm using double-sided tape. I'm just going to put the double-sided tape on the cardboard and basically just line it up and then go through and do that with all the walls. This will give me something to hold on to as I prime, and I can get up underneath it and I can hit it from just about every angle. Some of the smaller bits, like these caps and stuff, I kind of did the same thing. I just put some double-sided tape down and stuck the caps to it. With the scattered terrain, I did the same thing with the double-sided tape. Now, with some of these other little bits up here, the wall, I could have, there was no real part that I could double-sided tape to it because sometimes the double-sided tape will pull paint off when you pull it up. So basically what I did is I went in with poster tack, and I put some poster tack in here and just basically squashed it down. And so what I'm going to have to do here is just prime one side, let it dry, and then flip it over. And I can basically use the poster tack again to put it on the cardboard. So with all these lighter pieces and these other walls over here, that's what I did with that. I just used the poster tack. So I hope that gives you an idea of how you can set it up or get it ready to get primed. Okay, so this is everything. This is everything prepped and ready to get primed. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope it helps. Hope you have a good time prepping and getting your Gallo Dark ready to get painted. Take care, enjoy the hobby, and do what you love.